Right guys, for quite some time now I've been doing efficiency measurements on end-fed half-wave transformers, and these are the two cores that I've actually ended up with for QRP and for 100 plus watts. So I've been using the back-to-back method, and that basically entails hooking up two identical transformers, which means you've got to wind a pair, hook them up to my nano VNA, or you could do it with any of your vector network analyzers, measure the loss through the pair of them, divide that by 2, that gives you your loss for 1, and then you basically convert that into a percentage efficiency, which is what I've done with these spreadsheets. Now, as always, I have these spreadsheets in my Google Drive, and I'll put a link down in the description, and you can have read access. Some of you actually, I think by accident, ask for write access, which obviously I'm not going to give you, but you can download a copy and edit it to your heart's content. So there is another method you can use to check efficiency of your end-fed half-wave transformer. I've had this method suggested to me for quite some time by a handful of you, but most recently I've been communicating with Marek, SP9TKW, so thank you very much to Marek. He's a much smarter person than I am, and he's actually talked me through actually doing this check, and I've done that, and the purpose of doing that check is to do a couple of spot checks to check the back-to-back against the resistor method and see how much difference there is between those two measuring methods. I'm not expecting them to be the same. But before we get to that, I just want to talk to you about the method. This is the last core that I checked. This is one of these 26432511002 cores. This is probably fast becoming the go-to core for 100 watts digital modes, end-fed half waves, and they'll handle a couple of 100 watts single sideband. So this is actually, in this instance, this is actually wound as an auto transformer, so it's tapped at the second turn. It's got a 100 picofarad capacitor shunt on the primary side, and on this end, this is where it would go to your antenna. You can see that we've got two resistors in series here. This resistor is a 2400 ohm. This resistor is a 47 ohm, if I remember correctly. Now, after I connected these two resistors together, I checked them on my LCR meter, and they actually came out to 2448 ohms. So if you think about your 49:1, because that's what this is, and that resistance is directly related to your transformer. So if you take 50 and you multiply it by 49, you get 2450. So I'm only 2 ohms away from that, and that's actually quite important. As Owen Duffy has actually found out. Marek again and sent me a link to a document. I'll link that document below. But what this method allows you doing is you basically hook these up to one side of your nano VNA, you hook this up to the other side of your nano VNA, and do an S21, and you basically measure the loss coming through. But it's not quite as simple as that. There's this little logarithmic equation. Now, I do not know logarithmic equations, but Marek actually, I gave him the theoretical zero loss, which he's worked out with the combination of these two resistors, and it works out to 16.9862 dB. Now, what that means is if I had these resistors basically hooked up to my nano VNA, I would see 16.98, a line right across my nano VNA. That's my zero, so that's my reference plane. I suppose that's the best way to describe it. But anyway, you need to basically do this little calculation here. Excel's good at doing that for you. You can do that on your scientific calculator. Obviously, Excel wouldn't show it on a printout, so that's why I've done that here. So this formula here, this logarithmic equation, actually 2448 plus 50, divide that by 50, multiply that by 10, gives me this figure. And that's the figure that Marek actually gave me, so I've managed to get that to tie in. That was one thing I did manage to do, was type that into Excel. So we hook this up to the nano VNA, and then we're looking to see what the difference is. So it's actually a minus figure, minus 16.98. So we're looking to see more minus and what that would actually be. Now, I'm not going to go through every one of those figures, but this is the transformer that we're talking about here. this is it as a back-to-back done via the back-to-back method, and you could see obviously our efficiency and our loss here. Now, when we hook it up to the resistor and do this method, you can see that our losses are ever so slightly different. Some are not that much different. One of them's a wee bit out, but if you look at the difference between the methods, so this is the difference in percentage. So in 160, we had a difference of 0.45, and 80.39, 40.18, 20.18, 15, 1.63. 10 meters, there's a bit of a difference here. It's actually saying it's better using the resistor method. But I think what's good about this method is it's there or thereabouts. If you've done this, I would really appreciate your comments on this. It's quite an interesting subject, this. Reading a bit of Owen Duffy's stuff, what he's saying is all your connection leads should really be as short as possible. These are actually probably a little bit too long, these leads, so I may have got a slightly different method. So everything should be absolutely short as possible as not to affect your reading. But I was really just curious to see if I check it with the resistor, what would happen, because people have saying that you've been getting interaction between the back-to-back method, and you could see here that there's really not any measurable difference up until 15 meters, and then it goes out 1%, and then we've got this bit of anomaly on 10 meters. So maybe some of you that are a bit more clued up can actually answer that. So I'm just going to change these sheets here. So this is the same, but for this core here. Now I don't have the resistor on it because I put it on to do this, but this is actually the first one I do. So we've got exactly the same formula. So this 2448, which is some of these resistors, put that in, and then there's a funny little formula in here, but you don't really need to see that. But basically I'm taking the loss and I'm taking that from it, which gives me that, which then I convert into efficiency. Again, you can download this Excel spreadsheet, and if you click on these cells, you can actually see the formula that I've used. Pretty crude, but again, it works. Now, if we start looking at this 160, we're about 3% out, so a little bit out there, up to 80.76, but again, on 40.39, not a lot there, 2% on 20, 3% on 15, and 2.2 on 10. So the methods are a couple of percent within each other, and you know, I've got a little bit of experience doing things like gauge R&R, and you know, there's a lot of variables going here. I'm using an old Nano VNA. I calibrate it every time, but that doesn't really mean much. It's probably 8 or 9 years old. So, you know, the differences that I'm actually getting between the two methods, I don't think is that much. But if you're building an end-fed half-wave, and before you perhaps want to put it into your enclosure, instead of building two, you could actually use this method. Now, Marek, I said earlier, Marek pointed me to a Owen Duffy document, because a lot of people actually just use a 2400 ohm resistor and just use the one, but that can actually give you, again, a bit error in your setup. So the closest you are to 2450, which obviously is, because it's a 49:1, 50 times 49. If you're using a 64:1, you'll need to take 64, multiply that by 50, and that'll get whatever that is, and then you'll need to change your resistance value. But the method, I'm sure, is the same. Okay, guys, I hope that's been of somewhat interest to you. And for those of you that's been looking for me to actually do this experiment, there I have. I've done it. Am I going to do it for all these other combinations? No. But certainly interesting. If I've got enough cores to do back-to-back, I'll probably do them. But doing the resistor method, it's really no skin off my nose just to do that and get a little bit back up on my results. Okay, guys, let me know if you're going to do this and how you've actually got on if you've done this yourself. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.